Hi everyone. This video is going to be to help us get ready for our week 10. Week 10 we are covering chapter 7 and chapter 8. So this video will help us prepare. There may be several videos to cover everything that I want to go through. Just to kind of summarize, here is our schedule. Last week we did chapter 6 and you should have done the read and discuss number 2. That was due last Friday. If you were not able to finish that, don't worry about it. It's not a high point grade. Go ahead and start looking ahead at read and discuss number 3 so that you can make sure you get the points in that for that next one. We are going to be looking at chapters 7 and 8 practice today, as well as talking about how the exam review is set up and those kind of things. So again, there will be a couple of videos just to make sure that you have everything available. Make sure that you are logged in to Connect while you're watching this video so that you can progress with the homework. Just like in class, we're going to go through some of the practice, not every single one of them. There are some that comes more from the reading and the concepts that you guys will do on your own, and then there are some that will do some so that you get the practice, and then we'll leave others so that you can do on your own to get more of an understanding. For this week, you'll notice there's only a quiz for chapter 8. There's not a quiz for chapter 7. So when you're looking at those. Another thing you're going to notice for this week is I did extend the homework and the quiz until Sunday, which is October 30th. So you do have a couple of extra days so that you have time to watch these videos and then get the homework and the quizzes done by Sunday. The exam is next week, which is week 11, and it covers chapters 6, 7, and 8. Remember, you have the option to do the smart books, which will give you extra credit toward the exam as well. So make sure you're watching those. They will help review the concepts as well and help you prepare for the exam. All right, so let's look at what chapter 7 and chapter 8 are, and we're going to go to the modules for each of those. So I'm going to start with chapter 7. And if we look at that, chapter 7 covers accounting information systems. And again, we're not reviewing the entire chapter of that. We're looking at the 5 principles of accounting information systems, and then we're going to touch base on subsidiary letters and controlling accounts. So it's pages 259 to 262. Then we're going to move on to chapter 8. We're not covering everything in detail in chapter 7. There is a PowerPoint here that you can review. It talks about the quiz review, which since there is none for chapter 7, you'll notice that there's nothing in there. So chapter 7 is pretty brief. Let's look at chapter 8, because while it's not a difficult chapter, there's a lot of information in there. So I just want to talk about some of that real quick. So we talk about cash, fraud, and internal control in chapter 8. And when we're talking about that, we're going to be looking at the beginning of the chapter is going to talk about internal controls we have in place to protect that cash, prevent fraud, things like that. And then we're going to get into some of the other things that deal with cash, such as petty cash. If you watch the lecture videos, you know what petty cash is. We know that we're using that as actual physical cash on hand to use at the location you're at for expenses that you need to pay cash for. And then we also get into bank reconciliations where we're looking at the bank statement and reconciling that statement to what our cash balance in our books say and making sure that they equal and that we reconcile down to make sure that what we know we have recorded and what the bank is telling us that we may need to record. So we're going to see those different things as well. When we look at the resources that are available for chapter 8, you're going to see that there is a PowerPoint presentation. You have the lecture videos. There are 4 of them, which means it's about an hour. You have the cheat sheet. There is also an Edpuzzle, which is good to help review for the bank reconciliation. Edpuzzle just means that it's going to ask you some questions as you go through and do it. So just another tool to help you learn those concepts. All right. When we are finished with chapter 8, we're going to go into the next week where we're looking at doing the exam for chapters 6, 7, and 8. So I put up the review exam module for that unit so that you can see what's available out there. And the information is out there now, so you can start looking at it anytime. You'll notice that there is a study guide just like there has been for the other exams. It's a Word document. If you open it up, it kind of tells you what concepts you need to know and the types of problems you need to know how to do that you're going to do on the exam. It also reminds you that you have the smart book, that you can get extra credit toward the exam for each chapter that you complete. And then we have the Quizlet reviews for each chapter. We have chapters 6 and 8 that are out there. And then in addition, I have a Kahoot review that are posted for chapters 6 and 8 as well. Those are all out there to help you start reviewing for the exam for chapters 6, 7, 8. Again, remember, exam It's going to be very light on chapter 7, so just make sure you read through the concepts to understand those. All right, so let's take a look at the homework for chapter 7. That's where we're going to start. And again, just like we do in class, we're going to talk about some of the things and just kind of point you in the right direction. You're going to notice it's very, very short this time. There are 2 questions. The first one is asking you to match each description of the system principle that it reflects. So it's reading you a description of each of the accounting information principles, and you're going to just choose which one it matches up with. There are 5, and there are 5 questions. So you're going to choose one in each one. That is our first one for chapter 7. The second one, it's asking you to tell whether the account that's listed here is going to appear in the general ledger or a subsidiary ledger. We talked before briefly in chapter 5 about subsidiary ledgers, where we talked about if we have accounts receivable or accounts payable, we need to know who we owe that to or who owes us that money. So that's where the subsidiary ledger comes into. It's a ledger to keep track of each customer or each client. So in that case, we can see exactly who owes us money, and then that information gets fed up into our general ledger. So if it's for a specific customer, that's going to be a subsidiary ledger. If it's a regular overall account, that's our general ledger. So again, very simple for this one as well. And that's all there is for the chapter 7 homework. Again, we said it was very, very light, nothing too complicated. So now let's look at chapter 8. A lot more in chapter 8. Again, we're going to go through and we're going to talk about some of them. And again, some are going to be they're going to have, pretty simple things you're going to identify. A lot of the internal control functions that we talk about in chapter 8. So again, referring you back to the lecture video. If you have not watched those yet, I encourage you to take a moment, pause this, go back and watch the lecture videos for chapter 8 to make sure you're understanding the concepts before you're trying to apply them. So this one is just asking you to tell us which statement is true or false, and it's talking about internal control. So you're going to state whether it's true or false. That's pretty simple to do. The next one is asking you to identify the fraud triangle risk in each of the situations. So it's giving you a situation that occurred, and it's asking you which of the 3 fraud triangle risks is it describing. And you're just going to pick that one. And we talked in the video about that a little bit as well, the lecture video. When we go into number 3, it's asking you to choose terms. So again, this is definitions. You guys are going to do that one on your own. When you get into number 4, this is asking you to determine whether each procedure described is an internal control strength or weakness. And again, you're just going to, that's all you're doing is the drop down choosing weakness or strength. A lot of the internal control stuff I'm going to let you guys work on because it is really good to go through and really read through that part of the chapter and make sure you're understanding it. Because these are things you're going to see that are applied in real life companies just to make sure they're safeguarding their assets. The next one's asking you to, again, identify whether it's true or false. It's talking about other internal controls as well. Number 6, we're looking at cash over and short. And this is where we look at, we have a register. We're operating throughout the day. Sometimes, the cash that's flowing in and out could be miscounted. You might have, $2 bills that stick together. You might give out the wrong change. Sometimes it's accidental while we're over or short. Sometimes it's intentional. And that's why it's good to keep records of how much is occurring. In this example, it's just asking you to look at the amount of cash sales, and then it's telling you how much is actually in the register. So you have to see if in this first one, A, it says that we have $420 of cash sales. All right, but when they counted the register, there was $430. That means they had $10 extra in the register. So that means they were $10 over. In B, it says that the cash register's record shows $980 of cash sales, but the count of cash in the register is $972. So in this case, we were supposed to have $980. We only have $972. So they're $8 short. So we would have a shortage then. So I'm going to go to the book and show you the examples of what they do in the book to show the over and shortages and what entry you're going to do. It's going to be the same account we're going to use. It's called cash over and short. The account's not going to matter whether it's, the account's going to be the same whether it's over or short. What we're looking at is whether it's going to be debited or credited. And I want to show you the different examples. And again, that's why you have the link to your book, so that if you're unsure, you have a quick link to go into to see where you're, what the example in the book looks like. And I encourage you to always use that function. If it's something that you are not sure of, go back and look at the resources you have. Sometimes, again, in Connect, you may see that it has the hint button as well. And that's where it's going to play you a video and show you how to do that exact same problem with different numbers. In this case, it doesn't have that. In this case, it just has a link to the book. So while mine is loading, I just want to remind you, it's important to make sure that you look through the chapter, that you're reviewing the concepts before trying to do the homework, so that you know, hey, if I need to find this, I know I'm going to look at this section of the chapter. And I know we're halfway through the course, so it seems silly to remind you, but I had a student very recently ask how they find their book. So I just want to reinforce that, hey, we need to make sure that we're using this ebook. It is there as a resource. It's there to help you learn it. And we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. All right, so here are two examples showing us the differences in cash over and short. So they give us an example, the first one, that it's an overage, and it shows us here it's an overage. If it's an overage, you're going to credit cash over and short. If it's a shortage, you're going to debit cash over and short. That account is debited or credited by the amount that is over or short. So you're debiting cash for the amount of physical cash you actually have that you're depositing. You're going to credit sales for the amount of sales you actually have. And if there's a difference, then that goes into the cash over and short. So that's what we would look at. So these are the examples you're going to do the problem in the Chapter 8 homework. So let's look back at that. All right. So we had one that was an overage and one that was a shortage. So you have examples in the book now of how to go through and do this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one and let you guys have that, and you have a quick reference to refer to. All right, the next one is dealing with petty cash, and we're going to go through and do those. So the first one, it says that Brooks Agency set up a petty cash fund for $150. At the end of the current period, the fund contained $28 and had the following receipts. They had entertainment of $70, postage of $30, and printing of $22. They want us to prepare the journal entry to record establishing the fund and then reimbursing it at the end of the period. So our first one, we're going to be establishing the fund. So the account we're using is actually called petty cash, and what happens is we're taking cash out of our cash account and we're putting it into our petty cash fund. So we're going to use petty cash for that. So it's coming out of cash, which means we're going to be crediting cash. We're putting it into petty cash, so we're going to be debiting petty cash. So that our entry to establish the fund is a debit to petty cash for $150. It's coming out of our cash account. We're going to take it to the bank. We're going to write a check. We're going to cash it and take that physical cash and put it in our book, in our box, our cash box. All right. At the end of the period, we've used some of that $150. So now we need to replenish it, because when we go into the next period, we want to make sure that we have the full $150 available to us again. So we're going to be looking at the second entry, where it's to reimburse the fund. And all that means is you're looking at the receipts that you had and you're going to create an expense for them. So we had first entertainment expense, and that was for $70. We had postage expense, and that was for $30. And then we had printing expense, and that was for $22. So that's $122. So if we check our math, we want to make sure that we have the same, that if we had 122 plus 100, plus 28 that we have left in the drawer, that equals 150. So we've accounted for all of the cash. So we're going to take that back out of cash, and we're going to put take $122 out and put it back into that petty cash fund. Part 2 is just asking which one is going to be a credit to petty cash, and I'll let you guys do that part on your own. We're going to go to the next video now.